Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the fourth and final Lunch and Love Ambassadors edition. Every Thursday this month from noon to 1 p.m., Love Now Media has explored the resistance of grind culture and living a soft life, quote unquote, soft life, with our incredible 2023 Love Ambassadors. So these conversations, honestly, have been both timely and extremely relevant because our organization is on a mission to help create a more just, well, and equitable future. And we're in a perfect position right now, I think, just the state of humanity for reimagining and redesigning the future. And at Love Now Media, we're committed to doing that, to reimagining and redesigning the future by amplifying acts of love that are connected to social justice, to wellness, and equity. And that's what, honestly, each of the Lunch and Love conversations have been and felt like acts of love, at least for me. I am Sarita Martin, Director of Programs and Communications, and it has been an absolute honor to be in conversation weekly with our love ambassadors, Marquise Devon Richards, Soraya Nicole Delacroix, and Tiffany Tavares, whom you'll meet shortly. So if you missed our past Lunch and Loves, be sure to subscribe to the Love Now Media YouTube channel. You can catch up on all of the conversations and get to see for yourself why these four folks were selected as love ambassadors. I can at least briefly share here that they each lead, I'll say this, they lead, learn, and lean into their respective communities with love. They use their influence and platforms to amplify acts of love that advocate for social justice, wellness, and or equity. So this Lunch and Love Edition series is really just our way of saying we see you, we celebrate you, and we're creating more space for your light to shine. And that's what you're doing by being here today. That's what you're joining us in making possible, specifically for Tiffany today. And as I've shared before in previous Lunch and Loves, I can only hope that you're encouraged to not just listen, but to contemplate, seriously contemplate what a softer life means and looks like for you. And then join the conversation by engaging in the chat, with your comments or questions, because this is not just a conversation between Tiffany and I. You are very much here, okay? You can sit with us. You are at this table. I hope you have your lunch. If you have not eaten your lunch yet today, this is a reminder with love. We're gonna get that done, right? Yes. Shake your head. Yes, I am. Okay, cool. But no matter what, just let there be no doubt about it that your voice is valued here. So we're drinking our water, like I said, and we're minding our wellness. That's what we're doing today, honey. So this conversation is meant to hydrate and nourish you just as much as that lunch, okay, that you hopefully are enjoying. So with that said, we're gonna get into it and do so with a community agreement that this is a safe, respectful, and soft place for us all to land today. I don't know what your day is like. I don't know who is on the last nerve tap dancing on the fourth and fifth one or what, but this is your soft place to land. Take a deep breath, take it in, exhale it out. If you have not already, this is your time to do that. And I just ask that we taste our words before we feed them to each other. And I thank you in advance for doing that. So please, without any further ado, join me in welcoming our Lunch and Love guest, Tiffany Tavares of Wells Fargo. Hey, girl, hey.
If only every introduction went that way, Sarita. I need to book you for future programs and events, please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I will take that. I receive that love. Yes and amen. But like I said, I want to make sure y'all, I could talk to Tiff for we're not even gonna get into it. It can just go and go and go. But I want to make sure we honor time. So Tiff, right off the bat, what are you loving about your life right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. First, I before I even answer that, I have to say I want to do a quick shout out to my fellow love ambassadors. They have done a phenomenal job, and the only thing I can say that I hope I don't embarrass y'all in the way that I help close out this phenomenal month. So there's that. But no, what I love about my life right now, let's see, a couple things. I have to start with the most probably important and basic thing, which is I do not hate myself. That I feel closer to the essence of who I believe I am a little bit more every day. And that requires being, I think, still enough to recognize it, but also takes labor to make that evolution happen. I am comfortable with good riddance as I am with good people. That's something that I love. And that I'm really comfortable with not just my ability to recognize, but my ability to accept when I see that someone doesn't love themselves. And that actually now influences how I move versus not letting my ego tell me that I can do, influence, inform, transform people who have no interest in it. I can't want something for someone more than they want it for themselves. And I guess lastly, that I'm really grateful and love, love, love the fact that I have people in my life that adore me, right? There are a lot of people who walk on this earth practically living as a ghost because no one sees them, right? And being seen is a privilege. And I would love for us to figure out a way where being seen and heard and understood is a human right, the way that water, food, and shelter is supposed to. So that is what I love about my life.
Okay, so y'all starting to see why I love ambassador. Like it only made sense, right? Tiff, I okay, so the title is giving alphabet length. That's what I just said of Wells Fargo. I didn't even I can't. I'm not even gonna play myself trying to go there. Please tell us a little bit, and I think you've already told us just even in your previous response about who you are, but tell us a little bit about what you do and how love influences your work.
Sure, fair question. So I currently serve as the Senior Vice President of Technology, Diversity, Community, and Sustainability at Wells Fargo. And those are all the lovely letters that Sarita was referring to. So what that essentially means is that I work on a global team that focuses on people strategy, cultural transformation, and sustainability within the specific technology team at Wells Fargo. I've had the pleasure and honor of having a really diverse career in inclusive philanthropy, program development and strategy, stakeholder engagement for a number of different entities. And civic engagement is really important to me. So I serve on a number of boards. And then in terms of how love influences my work, it's interesting to pose it even in that way, because I would say that love is centered in all that I do, right? I think that oftentimes people feel like they work for an organization, whether it be a company, a nonprofit, or just whatever entity, or even themselves, and that's separate and apart and opposition to who they are. That's why the whole term work-life balance exists, which I have a lot of qualms with, right? Because I think oftentimes there's got to be some type of work-life integration, because I can't do something for another individual or another organization that I'm not willing and able to do for myself, whether it be myself as just Tiffany Tavares, the whatever title you want to put in there, or Tiffany Tavares Incorporated, right? Because that's my first and foremost employer. And if one of the values of Tiffany Tavares Incorporated is love, then everything I do there and after is going to be always influenced and directed by it.
Now you giving folks a word, you making us think now. Having to look at our work like, but do I love it? And I think it's a catch-22, right? Because I know there were certainly times in my life where I did not love the work that I did. It was not, I was in survival mode. There were bills to pay. There were mouths to feed. It was not, it didn't matter whether I loved that work or not. But what was not lost on me was the toll that it took on my spirit, on my mental health wellness, on my emotional wellness. There is something to be said about the price that's paid when you are engaging daily in work that it's not integrated into who you truly are. Has that always been the case for you, that you've always been working and doing things that you love? Was that a boundary that you put into place early on, or was that something that you more so grew into? What did that look like for you?
No, that's a fair question. And look, I 100% have been in a number of places where I did not necessarily love, the full portfolio of work I had to do, the people I had to do it with, the people I had to do it for, right? Like all of those components. That's why when, we ask our like young people, what's your dream job? I always feel like it's a disservice because you're asking them to choose from a series of options that they don't know about yet. And they haven't even defined their own definition of love. So to ask them to find their dream job and what does that mean for you when they don't know what the options are, and they don't even know how love, influences them currently and then in the future, that's really, a big challenge. So what I would say is that, 100%, I have not always loved, one or all components of a particular role I may have had. But what I will say is that I did love the ambition that I had while I was doing it. I did love the return on investment that I was making in myself. I loved the way that I handled myself in really challenging situations. I loved how I was able to prove people wrong. I love that no matter what was thrown at me, I still had the same tenacity to try to get it done. There are a lot of things. I love that I was still building towards the direction that I know was right for me, even if what I was doing at the very moment was not my favorite thing. There are other things in that tough moment that I still may love. You may not have loved your job, but I know you love the fact that you were able to pay those bills, right? And you love the fact that you were able to be an example, for your family, right? So there are still, those are the things that I lean on. And then the other thing I would say is, if you are looking for a source of, for lack of a better term, professional love to only come from the place where you get a direct deposit from, then that's a problem in itself, right? We shouldn't be looking at one person, right, as everything for love. When people kind of lean on their partner in that way, that's their only source of love. That's problematic. When there's only one organization that you're kind of receiving a professional love, that's a problem, right? I like to diversify my love portfolio. So if it's not just coming from the people I work with, it's also people I'm mentored by, it's people that I mentor. It's the way that I'm able to volunteer and provide service for a number of different organizations. I receive a lot of professional love in those outlets, not just who employs, right? Because Lord forbid, something were to go away, one of those kind of pillars, my foundation is not going to crack, right? Because I didn't necessarily have one place in which I was deriving all my love from. And if that were to go away for whatever reason, then I won't feel like my world is falling apart. And I think that, I diversify my people portfolio as much as I do my love portfolio, and it does me well.
Listen, if that pops up as a caption on one of my photos, like, I don't know, maybe I'm candle making or, making a clay pot, I'm diversifying my love portfolio. I like that. I like that. Oh, you started something. And I see folks in the chat also, it's resonating. Yes, y'all diversify your love portfolio. We're doing that all 2023. Okay, that's it. That's the new marching orders. Diversify the love portfolio. I need to see all the things that I love. I need to explore and play and have fun. So Tiff, you're in corporate America, and one thing, that's one area, I'll say this, that's one area where I am most familiar with grind culture being present. And it's not necessarily identified as that in corporate America. That's not necessarily the term that I've seen used, but specifically, I think as a little girl, seeing my mom, who was a Black woman, rising in leadership, breaking the ceilings, raising the hell, going to bat with misogyny and with patriarchy and what the perceived roles were, whether it was corporate America or the church, just constantly taking it to task. I saw grind culture also kind of start to creep in there, and definitely be very present in the pursuit of not only what is being denied yet deserved, but also in just like natural ambition as well. So for you, how do you define grind culture, and what does grinding, like being on a grind, look like for you?
Okay, I guess we're going to the tough questions now. Sarita, thank you so much for that. What a gift. So here's what I would say. And look, I have a lot of dear friends and colleagues that work in nonprofit. And, I think that every time corporate America is not just associated with, but owns, right, the perception of grind culture, I know that they roll their eyes because I also know they go through it too. So I would say that there are a number of organizations and styles and sectors that all go through it, but I obviously corporate sector and especially the financial sector, which obviously I am in, definitely own, I would say, a lot of that perception. Now, are components of that perception true? 110%. Like there is no doubting that. And then what does that look like for me? Oh my goodness, that is such a complicated question. I mean, there's no doubt that there's just volume and speed. There's an interesting combination of volume of speed in which work needs to get done. That is, I mean, I have rarely seen it. It's really unique and special. What I would say about that is that also anyone that is in this world, right? It's almost like what I say is like double dutching. When you're about to jump in and start, doing your thing, you don't ask them to slow down to accommodate you jumping in. You have to just jump in. And you jumped in recognizing exactly what happened. There are two ropes, they're going fast. You hope they're going to keep their rhythm, that's it. There's no accommodating you. You either, jump in and then you try to figure it out, but it's never going to, nor has it ever stopped for anyone. No matter how what you look like, how you identify, it just doesn't stop. That is the nature of capitalism in this country. So before I, talk about, hey, make sure you use all your vacation time. And, I could go down that route. But the fact of the matter is you could use every single, vacation time that you are benefited with in an organization. And that doesn't mean that you're going to know how to say no, that you're going to know how to pick the right people to advocate for you in the office. It doesn't mean that you drink enough water while you're in there. Like there are a number of other really tiny decisions and actions that can try to minimize the impact of grind culture. On the flip side of that, I also know that I have a significant amount of privilege and access that part of the reason why I agreed to it, right? It's not so much my obsession with like trying to get to a particular status or power, but it's about influence, right? Because you can have a lot of followers, it doesn't mean you have a lot of influence. So I've never been, I think I've told you this before, but it's not the obsession for me of getting a seat at the table. And I think that, yes, grind culture is that, but my obsession is with saving seats. So as long as the return on this sacrificial investment actually comes back, then it was worth it. Then I'm okay with that. Some people may not be, and that's totally fine. But I know that right now, at least in my life, all of the investment that I have been making, the kind of, proverbial blood, sweat, and tears, both for myself, my family, my community, as long as I'm continuing to see that, return, then I'm good. But when you don't see that and you continue to, self-select to minimize who you are, then at that point, that's on you.
Has there been ever been a time where you weren't seeing that return on investment and you had to make a tough decision? And if so, like, What when did you recognize, oh, wait a minute, this return is not, it's not giving what I needed to give? And how did you begin to make the pivot?
Great question. Here's what I would say. For me personally, if I recognize that there isn't a return and I know I need to make that change, then it ain't tough. I can't tolerate it very long because I'm not going to contribute to my own demise. I'm just not going to do it. Um, so what I would say is that, I always talk about, it's funny, I had have a mentee that I recently had a conversation with about cost versus value, right? And you think about not just jobs, organizations, but even people in your life, right? I know all of us right now, on this call can think of a person, a friend that when they call you or they text you, you're not ready to deal with them because you don't have the energy. You're cracking up because you don't have the energy, you don't have the time, you're not in the right mindset. You're like, I don't even have the right shirt on. Like, you're just not even like, you don't even have the right armor to deal with it because of how much they extract, right, from you. And you think about how much after that call or that interaction, it's gonna, just deplete you spiritually, etc. Think about how much cost, right, that particular relationship, that interaction takes versus the value of it. I can't say I have anybody like that in my life because unless the value at the very minimum is at the same cost of what I put in or ideally surpasses it, then you're not going to be in my sphere. So that includes employment, that includes places I live, the people that are in my life. I can't have things that deplete me in my world simply because of guilt, because we're trained to not throw things away. We're trained to not have, to not treat waste and such. Can't do it. Cannot do it. Again, I'm not contributing to my demise. And then the reason I say I'm not contributing to my demise, there have been a multitude of studies done on the physiological impact of like dealing with microaggression and macroaggression, right? And so when you encounter that in spaces and places where you cannot control it, and that's already impacting you, whether or not you wanted to, whether or not you already kind of emotionally, mentally told yourself, that's it, it's physiologically impacting you. That means it's biology. Now, biologically, people are impacting you and contributing to your demise. And I can't control that. And that's, for the most part, I can't control that, and that's okay. But for the places that I can, I'm not contributing to it. So therefore, no decision like that is ever going to happen.
I'm really appreciating the boundaries that I am hitting, that I'm hearing, because the boundaries are giving healthy, they're giving sturdy, they're giving I know who I am and I know my worth and I know what you're not going to do is dot dot dot. And I love that. And part of me also identifies with that. I think I'm definitely growing into that. My nose, y'all, they've gotten to a place where it comes so quickly and so organically. If it's not for me, it's not, and that's okay. And I release it back to you. I create space for my no is the yes that somebody has been waiting. It opens the door for the yes that somebody has been waiting on, right? So I even have started to view my nose as as like a leverage for blessings. It's like, okay, let me drop this no because somebody's yes is attached to it, right? But it took time to grow to that space, to evolve into that. And so I'm just curious to know what is the evolution of Tiffany? What got you to this place? Who is this lady and how did you become her?
Oh, I adore you for asking. That is so kind. First of all, I have to tell you, I love how you're translating what I'm saying because I'm like, oh, you've seen the skit with the anger translator. I'm like, Serena's gonna be my truth translator, right? Because you can't put everything I said in the text. So if I know that, I'm just gonna text you now on and be like, Sarita, this is what I want to say. How can I say this in 5 words or less? And Sarita's gonna be like, I got you. So thank you for that service. You can bill me later because I do not believe in free labor. So Um, yeah, so that's a great question. I get that question a lot. It's funny. It makes me think there was one time my mother came to visit me and I did like a little gathering with my mom and some like really close friends and colleagues and such. And it was like a quick little happy hour. And I remember my mom telling me, she's like, I feel like I was a cashier. And I was like, huh? What do you mean you feel like you were a cashier? She's like, everybody was online to talk to me because they wanted to, they had a lot of questions about me. They're like, so this is your child? I have a lot of questions about this over here, they're like trying to gather intel and research and things. And I was like, well, I do talk about doing your work in preparation. So at least they're listening to me. So, thank you, Mom. I appreciate you tolerating that. So in terms of how, I mean, look, it's everybody that's listening to this right now, your lived experiences, right? It just informs you. What I will say is that, and I try my best to do so in a respectful and healthy way when people deem their experiences are bad or good, right? Oh, I had a bad experience, or I had a good experience, or this was a bad time. And I said we shouldn't be thinking about people or ideas in such binary terms as good or bad. An experience is just an experience. And sometimes you don't really see the point, the purpose, or its influence until later, right? So for me, I was just collecting, all these different experiences, in this like toolbox. I wasn't labeling them. I don't know what they were. And not until later, you get triggered when you meet someone or someone says something or you're in a situation, you're like, oh, this feels familiar. Let me go in my little toolbox, right? In my little memory Rolodex and say, okay, I remember this now. Now I know what to do. Or let me try it this way. And so for me, the way that I've been able to just get here is not be so hard on myself, or beat myself up and give myself some grace. Or, because people always say, oh, I can't believe you didn't say anything. Or I can't believe you didn't do anything. Don't you wish you had? I'm like, no, I'm really glad that I handled it exactly in that way because now I can see the evolution. Like I needed to go through that moment in order for me to not go through it again, right? The first time you go through something is always the hardest. I remember walking to my first, let's say, like networking event, and the anxiety, the stress, no one knows me, do I belong in that room, all that stuff. But guess what? I just owned it because the moment I go through it, I'm never gonna go through that again. So when people avoid it, I'm like, you're like when you see a skit or a cartoon of a dog kind of pressing their paws against the floor and trying to hit that wall. You see, you're gonna hit that wall, right? It don't matter how you get there, you're gonna hit the wall. Hit the wall so we can start allocating our energy to how you recover from that afterwards. And then you're gonna learn never hit the wall again. But I don't like to keep redoing and avoiding step one. Like, no, let's get to it because I'm really excited about step like 8 and I want to get there already. So, my first experience, yeah, it may not be perfect. It's gonna suck, it's gonna be irritating. It may even have horrible consequences. But in order to recover from it, I have to go through it.
No, that resonates. Ooh. I think for me, what it has looked like is envisioning who's coming out on the other side of it, who I'm going to be on the other side of it. That has gotten me through some of the most challenging moments in life. Some of those experiences that I look back and sometimes I shake a little bit because it's like, oh, that was something, child. Little just bring me back real quick. But in those moments, it was always who's coming out of this. What is the woman coming out of this going to look like? What is she going to believe about herself and about life? What is she going to believe about love, about her capabilities? So I think like locking in on not the situation that's presently at hand, but at who is going to emerge from the smoke of it all. That has always kind of enabled me to empower me, I'll say, to move through it. And like you said, the wall is there. If I'm hitting it, like let me buckle up and put on a helmet and figure out how I'm about to get back up on the other side of this. So yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think being on the other side, time and time again, and even in this moment, it has allowed for almost a quiet as the dust is settling. And, I'm kind of like assessing the rubble, assessing, all right, I'm getting my bearings. How I landed, okay, my feet are on the ground. All right, whew, take that breath. And then soft life. Wait a minute, what's happening? I'm not in a struggle, or like things are requiring a different version of me, but like I'm okay with that. I'm getting clear on how I can show up. For you, how do you define the soft life? Number one, what does that look like? What does that feel like for you? And then two, what does it look like for you to lean into it?
So I'm going to be very, very frank here. I only heard the term soft life like in the last month or two. And this is when, people will be talking about, oh, it's in your hip. No, I have a bad hip. There's a difference. I had to ask some of my young friends, like, what's the soft, like, what is this, a song or a food or a gang, a restaurant? Like, what is it? And I just like to be transparent about that. So just forgive me because you may use an acronym and I'm like, let me Google real quick what these letters mean. Like, that's just me. So I fully own that. So I had to look up what soft life is. And when I did, and I did my research with my beautiful young people, thank y'all, what I would say is like, oh, I know what this is, right? So I feel like we just simply it's almost, you know, like when a product is the same product, but it's just the covering, the packaging looks different, what we call it looks different. I was like, okay, I get this. So here, I guess my version of a soft life. First, I have to say it's the irony. I find the irony in how hard it is to be soft. Let me just. I think that it is very hard to be soft. And you think about softness, it requires safety, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all of that. Softness also, to me at least, implies some level of like thriving in your life, right? If you're exhausted, if you're depleted, if you're angry, you can't get soft. So softness implies that there's a level of you that's thriving, and thriving is not free. There's either money that has been spent, there are people, time that has been sacrificed. So there's that. So there are a lot of components. That's why I mean it's hard to be soft because it has a lot of requirements. Whereas to me, hardness doesn't have as many requirements. That's why more people lean into it. It's cheaper. It's highly contagious. You can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. Like that's why people lean into that. So let me just first start there, right? The way that for me, in terms of how I interpret soft life, and again, I appreciate the question, is, there has become this obsession with self-care, right? And just that phrase, and I'm, hashtag roll your eyes, like I just can't. And I'm like, when are we going to start being obsessed with like self-preservation instead, right? Because self-care implies that the damage has been done and you're trying to recoup in some way. And I don't want to get to a place where it, after the injury has occurred and after, the exhaustion button has been pressed. Like, what if it's self-preservation? What if it's preventative care, right? What if we recognize the symptoms and try to treat that in advance versus waiting for the full-blown diagnosis? So for me, a soft life is like about a level of awareness and alignment with yourself that enables you to make better choices for how you live. That's really what soft life, means to me. And the reason, actually, it's funny when you were talking about your evolution and use of the word no. It's funny. I even have a really great relationship with my manager, my boss. She's, I consider her a good friend, and she and I are always talking. I always remind her, it's not just a no; it's a responsible no, and that always makes you feel better about using it, right? So, how do we get into the practice and habit of knowing that if the no was tough for you, it's not because that means you should feel guilty or that you should regret it. It means that it was responsible, and it's really hard to do responsible things.
As an adult who adults every day, I 100% endorse that message. It's hard to be responsible. Oh my gosh, too much. But they got to get done. Somebody's got to do it, right? It's apparently got to be us. So that's that. But no, I'm really appreciating self-preservation. And I think it's self-preservation in a sense has gotten, I feel, gotten a negative connotation attached to it. And it's like, no, like that's like survival 101. It's like until you right, you can't get everything, you can't align everything else. You can't align yourself with everything else when you're out of an alignment with yourself. Um, and then I remember kind of talking about this on Instagram about how we talk a lot about going from survival mode to thriving, going from I was surviving, I'm trying to thrive. And it's like there's an in between those two, right? Like going from survival straight to thriving is a really big change. And it that's coming quickly. It's not giving the body, the mind, the psyche, the nervous system time to adjust from survival mode to thriving. And so I was just sharing that the in between for me is learning how to sustain. Like I want to learn how to sustain myself. And that for me was the where self-preservation I think came in, was like, no. What does it look like for me to sustain, to not do something out of a sense of fear or obligation or guilt, but to do it because I want to do it, because it genuinely brings me joy. And that's part of what has kind of defined some of my soft life. But for you to, was there ever moments when you started to feel or recognize that life life's hardness was like grinding you down into a version of yourself that you didn't realize? Like, was there moments where you had to like, wait, let me get myself together, let me lean back into this soft life, self-preservation? And if so, what were some of the steps you took to kind of reclaim those pieces of yourself and reclaim that softness, or to preserve that softness?
Yeah, no. It's a good question. I want to address really quickly something you just said about the negative connotations with the term, preservation, self-preservation. Um, and I get that. And every so often, if I have that sense of like, oh, is this selfish, right? Because the line between selfish and self-preservation is also very, right? Or self-centered, or however you want to label it. And so, one of the things I have to remember is that a lot of the systems, right? And when I talk about community at large, a lot of the systems that we have to work and live in, and unfortunately sometimes against, they have survived this long because there have been people dedicated to the preservation of it. And there are people who are working really hard to preserve what they believe to be this country's heritage, this country's founders. So the idea even of what is worthy of being preserved, including entire lives and communities, have been decided by individuals and systems for a long time. And so when we start to feel a fraction of guilt about self-preservation is wild to me. When an entire, I'll just say a good percentage of a lot of their life experiences have simply been felt not because that they chose it, but simply because someone else was trying to preserve something they had going on and you were simply a consequence. So I no longer feel guilt about that. That's number one. Number two, yeah, there are definitely times when, I didn't recognize myself necessarily because of, what may have been going on at that time and what have you. And unfortunately for me, the one particular, I guess, experience that I had that reminded me of like, oh, Tiffany, you can need to slow down in some way a little bit. I don't know what that looks like or how you don't do that. Is that I had a horrible accident. that resulted in me being in a burn unit for quite some time, and required me to actually, like have to grow new skin. And like I went through it, and it was simply because of me like literally multitasking and doing a lot of things at one time. And no one had any idea except a handful of people. And I continued to work and to show up. And this was happening when, again, I know it's a privilege to be able to have work from home during the height of the pandemic. And so a lot of people just had no idea. And so after that, one small choice I made for myself is I'm no longer multitasking. If I'm doing laundry, I'm doing laundry. If I got to do some online shopping, I'm doing some online shopping. If I got to walk to this place, I'm going to walk to this place. You're not going to see me try to wrap up a phone call, try to text, and one thing at one time, which required me to manage my time better, right? And required me to set some boundaries about how time is used. Because they're like, oh, you can just do this while you meet me here. Thank you for your recommendation for me on how to curate my time. But this is how not to just best use it, but also what's best for me in terms of my well-being at that moment. And so that's a commitment I've made to myself since then, and it has worked out really well for me and haven't gone back.
And hey, new skin. Yes, healing. You're glowing, girl. I don't know where it happened or what, but I'm glad you're okay and that you are on the other side of healed. So shout out to just our bodies. Our bodies are so powerful, so miraculous, just by their own design. And I think like part of soft life for me it came by way of an car accident. We were talking earlier about smashing into a wall. Somebody smashed into me head on, and that was like a wake up call. I'll call it an accident that had purpose, because life absolutely changed after that. And it was like, oh no, wait, what am I doing here? What is my life? I got to slow some things down and become very intentional, which I feel like you just spoke to about, like, I'm not multitasking. Someone said it, and I wish I could remember their name in the conversation, but it was the quality of presence. That has been a goal of mine over like the past 18 months, to improve my quality of presence, of me being present in life and being present in the conversations that I'm having and all of that. But listen, I want to make sure folks know who are tuned in. The chat is open. So if you have questions, comments, I see folks have been dropping their responses. Shout out to Denise. She said, soft life, quote, a level awareness and alignment with self that enables you to make better choices about how you live. Yes, better choices about how you live. I feel like that's it right there. That's what it boils down to. It's like, if you're not happy with your quality of life, maybe first we look at the choices that we're making that are impacting our quality of life, and not the big ones necessarily about, your livelihood, because kind of like Tiff and I spoke to at different points, like life going life and bills are going bills, and they're going to do that thing at the same time. So we got to navigate that. But the day to day, like Tiff was speaking to, specifically with corporate America, when you're out in the office, like, are you drinking your water? Are you drinking your water? Are you minding your business? Are you minding everybody else's business? Go ahead.
So I just thought about something. So just because I've been having some conversations with different folks that have been, this has been a big point. So I think a lot of choices that people make, and I know this is a very general kind of broad statement, but a lot of choices that people make that they believe not necessarily brings them some happiness. I don't want to say that people are constantly making just bad choices for themselves. I actually don't think that's the case. I think a lot of people make choices that make them happy, but they know it doesn't make them the most happy. It's always not like the top 3 or even top 5 choices they would have necessarily naturally made. And when I've asked a couple of folks that I know, say, why did you decide to go there, right, for vacation? Or why did you go? How come you decided to do that during the weekend, or whatever it is, They're like, oh, because I didn't want to do it by myself or I didn't have anybody to go with me. I hear a lot about there. So I always, for me, I think a lot of my joy, I realize, is also because I have a very significant amount of comfort with the idea of solitude. And that's not to be confused with aloneness, but solitude. And a lot of people are not comfortable being by themselves. And so therefore they prevent themselves from making choices where they would be their own company. And they would much rather, not do certain activities or try certain things simply because they are alone. And that really breaks my heart because I'm like, well, you don't like your own company, then how other people don't like your company, right? Like the bar is so high for me, by me, for me, that if other people either get disappointed or don't fulfill or whatever it is, that's cool because I have way higher standards for me than anyone can ever impose on me. So if there's a restaurant I want to try and having one simple little meal that I really want requires me to be by myself, then I'm going to do that, right? So, and again, and I'm talking about small things. I'm not, I don't want to make it seem like somehow choice is always like about a big direction or a job change, but just think about day to day things that are a little bit more transactional, things that are also, like what's considered a low hanging fruit. So if it's not, by yourself or someone that you haven't seen in a long time or whatever that case may be, then, but you're uncomfortable because you hadn't reached out to them in a long time, then just like do that. You gotta try that. Part of the equation in all of this is not just a choice, but who is part of that choice as well, right? And if you're uncomfortable with the choice, then don't make people uncomfortable by getting them involved in terms that you can't make for yourself. So that's the other part that made me think of it.
There was a polite read in that for all of us. I hope we all grab that. Like you making choices. Okay, it's impacting, it's connected to other people. I think we have a question. What are some small things you do to find softness when people or the world are being challenged, when it's being challenged? What are some small things that you do to find softness when everything else is hard?
Mm. Well, first I have to remind myself that I don't know a time when everything else has not been hard. So I have to know that whatever choice I end up making or whatever thing I end up doing or practicing is not contingent on the difficulty going away, right? Because if you were to wait for that, you ain't never going to do a damn thing. So the purpose and drive behind doing it is not to end or cease or subside any difficulty. It's simply different than that. I'll just say it that way. And in terms of what those things are, I mean, it's a mix. It's a mix of I think could be daily practices or habits. If I'll use myself as an example. I really love, people that know me know I love the arts. And I'm consider myself a very creative person. And so no matter where I travel to for work and it's a really crazy, schedule, I will try to squeeze in, a visit to a gallery or a museum, right? Because, I love having my home is my sanctuary and it's full of really beautiful art and objects that bring me a lot of joy. It's aesthetically pleasing. And so to have that type of beauty around me, whether it be in nature, whether it be something someone created, whether it be a song, a show, whatever that case is, I try to make sure that I experience that because that's something that brings me, joy and like centers me in a lot of ways. So there's that, and I don't have to like wait till I go on vacation or like wait until I go visit, so and so great place. Like I can do that in a number of ways. There's that. Another thing that I practice quite a bit that I really truly adore is also like, I know this sounds strange, but like surprising people in that, I have stationery and I would just mail people a random note or a random package or like with a quote or something. I just love surprising the heck out of people. Because it also, number one, it forces me to stop and do something like that doesn't have any benefit to an organization that I'm on the board of, an organization that employs me, or in my home, things I got to get done. It literally benefits nobody except me being able to surprise someone and me being able to like bring a smile to someone's face for the day. I had sent a little packet to a friend of mine who just started her business. And I remember I got invited to the opening and I couldn't make it. And probably like a month passed, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" I never like apologized for not being able to attend, and I forgot to completely acknowledge, and I felt so horrible. So I just sent something. I was like, I'm so sorry I wasn't able to be there, but like, just know, this is super exciting for you. I can't wait to visit. Like, just something really simple. And I remember when she responded, she was like, it was one of the hardest days. She was like, it was like the first day I, um, you know, um, thought to myself, I shouldn't have started this business. And like, she was really struggling. So she's like, so to get that timing of it was impeccable. Now, did I know that? Of course not. That's not the point of me sending. I'm like, well, I'm going to get her on her worst day. Like that wasn't the point. But just, what can I do? Because I also know me, right? I move 150 miles an hour on a slow day. So to be able to just like stop, and the likelihood of me stopping for myself, right, on a day that's really like, it feels like really deregulated is really challenging. But I'll stop for somebody else. And I know that that's, people are like, oh, that's not always healthy. Yeah, but when it works and when it allows me to like express gratitude for them, and again, just surprise them, then I'm happy to do that. So I do that in some form in a tiny way, a minimum of once a day. And then normally like once a month, I reserve, a couple of hours during the weekend to like just simply send notes out to people and just, you know, remind them that I was thinking about them, that they pop into my head and, hey, I know we haven't spoken or what. I just try to do that for people because I think, again, people like to be seen and, known that they're not forgotten. And I know what that's like to feel that. And I hate that people that I would know would ever feel that. And I don't know it.
Yeah. I echo what Constance said. Please surprise me, Tiffany. I mean, right, Constance. Girl, anytime you keep me on your list, okay? Check me twice. I'm real nice. Shout out to Joz. She said surprise birthday wishes. Ooh.
That's because it's so funny. I unfortunately have like two calendars, and there was one calendar popped up, and it was like, Johnson's birthday is tomorrow. I was like, what? And then I was like, well, that's clearly the mail's not going to get to her, and I'm not going to be packing and have her get it late. So I just sent her a quick email. Like I know it's like not my ideal style. But I was like, I just want to let them know I was thinking about her and yeah, I'm really glad I did because I also know, look, Josh is another one that'd be ripping and running. So if I can get them to stop just for a hot second and acknowledge their trip around the sun, I am thrilled.
Yes, yes. I know we're getting short on time. We probably have like less than 5 minutes. So if you have any comments or questions, y'all, drop them in the chat now. And while folks are doing that, Tiffany, I'm curious to know because you're big on community. And this is part of why we love you and why, we really wanted to just celebrate you as a love ambassador. When you see life's hardness wearing on community members, wearing on the people that you love, what's your approach to either curating a soft place for them to land or maybe kind of guiding them to softer ground? What's your approach to that, if at all?
No, that's a fair question. Especially as I'm sure most of us, if not all, are Philadelphia residents, and we see and get a little sometimes I think desensitized to the news because it does become exhausting. So what I would say is that I think I would sound pretty tight with my neighbors. I really love my block and the people that are on it. So I'm going to use them as an example in this context for community. But simply that we check on each other. I mean, honestly, that's really it. Asking what is it that they need. I'll tell you a very, very quick story because I know we're at time. I remember when I first moved to the block, there was a particular neighbor who, was as mean as she can be, right? She'd just be like, someone said, oh, Miss So-and-so, this is our new neighbor, Tiffany. And she was like, I don't give up, And as soon as I saw her, I said, I'm going to make her my best friend. I love her to death. Like, I didn't get, I was like, you are not gonna sway me, sis. You're not gonna sway me. So every day when she was outside, good morning, every single day. And then a few months had passed, and there was one morning I didn't say it. And when I was walking by, I all of a sudden heard, good morning. When I tell you the victory in my brain that went off, okay? The victory, you can tell me nothing that week. Nothing. Okay, if I got Miss So and so to say good morning and acknowledge my existence, what? Okay. So, and I say all that to say, fast forward, I don't know, maybe 3 years about, I want to say later, I was in her home helping her drink tea because she was dying from cancer. Right. So I say all that to say that sometimes building community, and not just building community, I don't want to say that, but even like healing the community, it's not something that you start and that you end. It's something that you're just constantly picking up because it started before you and it's going to end after you. It's like that double dutch. And so all you got to do is just keep the rhythm. So momentum is never lost.
It's like a mic drop. I feel like that's right. Lancey, I see Lancey like clapping hands, and I'm like, yes. So thanks for coming to our our love and lunch and love talk, because that was it right there. Also, shout out to Lancey. Lancey said, just a big thank you to Tiffany. What a beautiful person. Thank you for sharing yourself with us. Yeah, that's the mic right there. That's the wrap. That's where we're gonna leave that, Barbs. This Lunch and Love Ambassadors Edition has been the most, just the softest of places to land every single week. And I don't know about y'all, like July was given a little different energy. Okay. It was like, I don't know how many of you might be exhausted right now. It just might be a little bit like there's bags, but they're not showing, but you feel them. You know, like I'm not sure where you're at, but I know for me, July has definitely been like the highs and the lows and the curveballs and all the things just wrapped up into one. And I've absolutely been thankful for every single part of it, because to Tiffany's point earlier, it's experiences, right? It's you taking the experiences and seeing what they're showing you about yourself and about your life and about your purpose and all these things, and using it to move yourself forward. But I have genuinely just looked forward to every single Thursday with our love ambassadors, because they are so dope. And they are so centered in love, and it's so authentic. That's just like, I know that the cups are going to be refilled. And when we refill our cups, the overflow is going to pour into the lives of the communities we are a part of, the communities we serve. And that is the power of love. That is the work of love. And shout out to Denise, who said love can be disarming for sure. It has absolutely done that every Thursday for me. Every Thursday at noon, it disarms me, and it allows me to leave whatever the day was or the week was outside that door. Because when I sit here, even on a virtual Zoom, I know that love is here, and that this is the soft place to land. So Tiffany, Marquise, Soraya, Nicole, Delacroix, thank you all so much for just bringing your full selves to the Lunch and Love series and for holding space with us. I see folks that are hopping in the chat. Naima said, thank you for speaking with so much love and honesty. Appreciate you always getting to the heart of the matter. Mayor Darlin, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, said, needed this. Thank you for creating the space for this beautiful conversation. Denise said, thank you, Tiffany. So grateful. Thank you, Sarita. Your heart-led conversations are wonderful. So folks just giving love. This all love in here. And we are thankful for that. Tiff, be sure, please, to let folks know how we can support the work of your love. Like if there's any way that, we can be activated, please do let us know.
I have a request. I have a request. All right. So first of all, the fact that the people that are on this showed up means that you're willing to invest in yourself and love Now Media. And my ask is that you continue to do that. I think that's the biggest gift that you can do, because you can't keep talking about, a lack of love and a lack of opportunity to connect with others, et cetera. But then not support the organizations that facilitate that and allow for a really healthy platform to do so in a way that is equitable and inclusive of all identities. So please continue to do that. So that way, Josh, Sarita, and a number of just incredible people on the team can continue doing what they do. Because this is when we got to put our money and our resource where our mouth and our heart is. And this is the place, and you got to do that.
I received that. I received that. We received that. We're so thankful for the way that you love on us. Because listen, when we decided to move forward with the Lunch and Love Ambassadors Edition, we made sure everybody got their flyers and getting everything that they need, and they started getting the word out. And I promise you, I don't know what Tiff did like maybe a week and a half ago, but something happened and the RSVP started going crazy for our Lunch and Love. And we were like, oh, she must have said something, because folks are coming out the woodwork, and the love is just like, it's pouring in. And I think that speaks to, Tiffany, your influence and your impact, like the power of just you being you and you showing up in the fullness of who you are, and to see that impact in so many different spaces. I personally gotten to see that. It's truly beautiful, and it just affirms precisely why you are a love ambassador. So thank you. You all, if you head to the chat, you can see some links there for how to support Love Now Media. Please make sure you stay tuned, always following at lovenowmedia.com or visiting Love Now Media, or excuse me, at Love Now Media. And of course, visiting the website, lovenowmedia.com. We have some really exciting things coming up. And our love ambassadors, they hold this role actively for a year, but the relationship continues on. Their love lives on, right? It continues. And so shout out to our 2022 love ambassadors. I'm just looking forward to continuing to see it grow, because they really are like using the power of love to shift systems, to shift hearts, to shift communities, to shift cultures and environments in the best and most beautiful of ways. And we are absolutely committed to supporting that, to creating space for the celebration of that. So with that said, this is officially a wrap, our final Lunch and Love. If you missed any of them, you can head to Love Now Media's YouTube page and check them out. Give us some time to make sure we can turn around and get tips up, but you will be able to share it out. No worries. Make sure you subscribe to the Love Now Media newsletter. We share stuff out there all the time. And then, of course, our socials will be sharing it there too. All right. And so with that, y'all, it's a wrap. Love you. Tip, love you.